Of the month-long IEBC enhanced voter registration exercise, an exercise that has been characterized by low voter turnout and concerns over voter apathy among the young population targeted in this exercise by the electoral body. This even as IEBC has maintained that it will not extend the voter registration drive due to lack of funds, a decision that comes just a day after High Court in Eldoret ordered the extension of the voter registration process to November the 9th. Last week, IEBC chairperson Wafula Chebukati voiced similar concerns, saying the exercise will not be extended due to budgetary constraints. Chebukati said the commission was allocated 1.2 billion shillings out of the 4 billion shillings it had requested to carry out the exercise. And as curtains close on the exercise today, that has seen the IEBC net only about 20% of its target, questions abound on just why 9 months to a crucial poll, the electoral body continues to encounter headwinds, and why the younger population is disinterested in this all-important exercise, or are they? Welcome to the broadcast. You are watching the Frontrow. I am Akisa Wandera, and to engage with us here on the program, we are asking you, is the Kenyan electorate motivated enough to register and elect its leadership? Is the Kenyan electorate motivated enough to register and elect its leadership? Would love to hear your thoughts on this in the run-up to the 2022 polls. Will this particular voter registration drive in any way reflect in the 2022 polls? At Akisa Wandera, at KTN News KE, the hashtag to use is Frontrow. And of course, any questions or comments as we continue with the show, and questions to our panelists, I will definitely be shooting them as we continue with the program. Let's take a look at who we have on our panel on this episode of the Frontrow. Joshua Changwony on my immediate left is the Executive Secretary for the Constitution and Reform Education Consortium, or CRECO if you like. CRECO monitors elections not only in Kenya but across the region and beyond. Their work begins long before the election day, and we're talking to us about this particular exercise and what are the missing links and whether it's time to change strategy. Mugambe Kia is also with us here. He's the Regional Director for Article 19 Office in East Africa. Mugambe is a distinguished human rights lawyer with close to 3 decades of expertise in different capacities in the area of rule of law, justice, governance, democracy, and human rights, including freedom of expression and media freedom issues. Also joining us on this episode of the Frontrow as we dig deeper into some of the issues bedeviling the IEBC and what this would mean in a run-up to the 2022 polls. Once again, hashtag Frontrow at Akisa Wandera at KTN News KE. Let's begin with a reporter. A reporter puts together before we get to our panelists. Now, the low turnout of youth to register as voters has been blamed on disillusionment and lack of adequate sensitization. This was revealed during a youth conference dubbed Vijana Twaweza, held in Isiolo under the auspices of the NCCK. The forum brought together different stakeholders, including the IEBC, the EACC, Registrar of Persons and security agencies, who were put to task on election preparedness, as Alan Ochanda reports.
Tuesday marks the closure of the 30-day enhanced voter registration exercise, but the 6 million new voters projected target by the electoral body will be missed, and by a big margin. IEBC has been at pains to explain the voter apathy. A youth conference held by the National Council of Churches in Isiolo, dubbed Vijana Twaweza, laid bare the underlying issues that inform the trend.
There is some apathy among the young generation, and it is the high time, I think, as the churches, we should encourage them, we should enlighten them to come out and register as voters.
I am sure there is a law Kimemia broke. The Secrets Act. When a secretary of the cabinet comes and confirms that the deep state actually determines who becomes president. Then I saw Buru Odinga going around saying that, the only thing that Raila has been missing is the system. Now he has it. This is why young people are not turning up to register as voters. There's a lot of disillusionment across the country.
Of course, they have had people talking about the deep state and so on, which is truly a very unfortunate thing, because these are lies. Because we know that voting, and IEBC will tell you that voting actually ends at the polling station. because we have a history of how we created the electoral system.
The youth drawn from Tharaka Nithi, Meru, Isiolo and Marsabit counties say the disillusionment is brought about by the feeling that their votes do not eventually count, besides IEBC appearing to have been emasculated. IEBC still holds the enhanced rigorous registration exercise will not be extended and called for the eligible citizenry to turn up for enlisting as voters.
Most of those who are corrupt are not in the youth bracket. A number of them are people who are actually in their old age. So the youth, it is your time, step out and stand firm that this is our position, this is the kind of leadership that we want, and at the end of the day, you'll be able to make a difference.
Youth in Isiolo say identification cards acquisition has been a tall order, hence unable to register in large numbers. By Friday last week, IEBC had registered only 800,000 voters against a target of 4.5 million by end of week 3. As the enhanced voter registration exercise wraps up tomorrow, Tuesday, the youth who have been the targeted lot in the exercise by the IEBC claim the body did not carry out enough sensitization besides disillusionment, and thus the underwhelming turnout for enlisting as voters. Alan Ochanda, KTN News.
Right, those sentiments in that particular report by Alan Ochanda from Meru and from Isiolo rather, perhaps a very good place to start. And gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program here. We've had what some of the young people have had to say, some of the sentiments that are already in public. And there seems to be a feeling that young people are simply disinterested in this process. Is that the case, Joshua?
Thank you very much, Akisa. I think we were in this studio when this exercise began, yes, 1 month ago. And important to note is that voter registration is the bedrock for any democratic election. And when we look back to the 2 elections that this country has had, in 2013, we had a national registration rate of 68%, and in 2017, 78%, an increase of 10%. And it is very, very alarming and very, very annoying that in 2021, we have no achievement but regret, especially having deployed huge amount of resources, public money, in an exercise that, rates of registration is very low. But of course, we have to ask ourselves very hard questions, Akisa, that we as Kenyans, are we doing the right thing? Are we just ritually engaged in traditional exercises where when people have moved, people have changed? For instance, this exercise by the Independent and the Electoral Boundaries Commission was about targeting new voters, people who've just attained the age of 18 and above, who've never voted in any election. But you ask yourselves, this constituency of Kenya's population, are they in the villages and the polling centers moving from one place to the other, or they are in the virtual spaces? The methodology probably could have changed to suit where the youth of this country are operating from. Mm-hmm. And for me, I think we have to think twice even before we ask ourselves, how do we put resources into use? Mm-hmm. And of course, unfortunately, we've attributed this to lack of money to the elections management body, whereas I do not believe that is the case. There could have been a better way of mobilizing youth in this country to register as voters.
Mugambi, what I'm getting here is the problem is not young people and whether they're interested in this process, but more about how we chose to communicate to them or speak to them. Do you agree?
Yes. I actually want to identify with the views of Joshua. The key word we've been using here is apathy. Now, apathy is based on lack of knowledge, lack of access. The one thing that the youth don't have is access to information about why they should vote. Because, just think about it, Akisa. In 2007, when they voted, the change they voted for disappeared into the post-election violence. In 2013, the change they voted for, they had been promised big stadia, they had been promised speed trains, They'd been promised all manner of goodies, disappeared into big debt. So they're asking, why are you, as in their language they call us bazoo?
Yeah.
Why are you bazoos telling us we need to vote? Now, on the side of IEBC, they're saying the language they're using is the same language I see we adults use in that constituency without understanding that there is a way the youth talk to each other. If the youth do not trust you, you cannot be telling them, come and you will see change.
Yeah.
Because they're telling you, we have seen no change yet. All we're seeing is actually more problems. It actually does look like elections give you or breed even more crisis. So yes, I do agree with Joshua. For me, it is not a lack of resources. It is a lack of imagination. Let me say this. In 2007, I met a genius of a man. His name was Kevin Umbajo. Kevin Umbajo ran a communications outfit called True Black Entertainment.
That's Big Kev.
That's Big Kev, the late Big Kev. He came up with a mechanic called Vijana Tugutuke. Vijana Tugutuke had a very simple mechanic. Who do the youth listen to? So he went into pop culture. He brought us Nameless. He brought us Juakali, Amani. They were put in concerts with Ken Wa Maria, for example, with Machakos. And the youth were told, if you're from this area, come. Come with your voter's card. Come with your ID. If you come with your ID, the IBC will register you.
At the venue?
At the venue. If you come with your voter's card, you're getting in free. At the end of that exercise, which took about 10 months, the dense ECK, which was led by the late Kivuito, Samuel Kivuito, had said, the evaluation report said there are 4 million newly registered voters. 4 million. Not less than 1 million, 4 million in 10 months. Nearly 2.5 was directly or indirectly attributable to Vijana Tugutuke. Look at those figures. And you ask yourself, this one, where you don't even tell them that it's based on rights, that actually, if you do not cast your vote, you certainly will not get change. If you do not vote, those who will vote for the people you have been saying break your promises. So why are you guaranteeing failure? Why are you not listening? But I would not be the one to say it. I would look at the current, who do they listen to? Who are their current? And as also Joshua says, this is the digital age. So you begin to also weave and wed it into the digital space. Who do they listen to? Look, Blaze, a campaign that goes to the youth and says, do ABCD. Do they see them using people like myself? There you go. That's the problem we're having, is we're trying to dictate to the youth who have no faith in us. We have no credibility in their eyes. In fact, what they always see is that we lecture them, we tell them, we direct them. Not, you come and explain to me, we have a conversation because I open my ears. So what do you see? The abject failure we have. That is a problem. But also, I want to say that all is not lost. Let me just, last point, that even if, as the IEBC has said, and I have not advised them to disobey court orders, because that's become, again, another really serious problem where again, it's breeding cynicism. Anyway, even if they closed the voting today, we still have until the end of February because there's continuous voter registration. Remember, this was just a period of enhanced continuous voter registration. We can still go into, so there's a gap, well, I'd say what, 4 months? Where if the IBC genuinely wants to get more youth, they call stakeholders, civil society, business, donors, government, political parties, bring them together and say, we have a crisis. And I tell you, at the end of it, you'll have a multimedia campaign that not you bring the youth, you go to them.
Joshua Changom, what I'm getting here is the IEBC got this wrong right from the beginning. I think both of you seem to agree on that. But this same IEBC, and even when you talk about disobedience of court orders, they have consistently maintained that they have budgetary constraints. They do not have money. So even if they continue with this exercise for a week and they say they don't have money to pay, to run this particular exercise, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, thanks so much, Akisa. But I think let me just begin by saying that the management of public affairs in this country is not inspiring with narratives that promote ownership by many people in this country. We are obligated to pay taxes on a day-to-day basis, regardless of where you come from in this country. Whereas you know that the people that you put in positions of responsibilities through your vote are people who are supposed to act on your behalf. Because the Constitution has given the people of this country the power. And it begins with Article 1, sovereignty belongs to the people. And when we say sovereignty belongs to the people, the first level of their participation is during voting. And their being enabled to vote, first of all, is through registration as voters, regardless of age, whether you are a youth, mid-level, or even probably you'd never had the opportunity to participate in the previous elections. Kenyans have a right, a fundamental right, to register as voters. But you ask that why is IEBC not capable to mobilize people who've never registered as voters? I don't attribute that to lack of resources. I attribute that to lack of promotion of ownership by the people of this country in the electoral process. And I began by saying that the narratives in the management of public affairs in this country does not inspire many people, because once people are sent to political office, they become dissociated from the people who gave them the mandate and power to hold those positions of responsibility. And I say that because if the people who have been put in power journeyed through an electoral cycle in the management of public affairs, people will willingly benefit. Because now, look at the narratives that we have. The youth that we are targeting are crying of unemployment. They are crying of lack of school fees. The loans, probably that is funding their education, is not very accessible as such. And it's in the public domain. It is not like these are narratives that are very strange in our country. So the space where we are operating in is a space where we have those ones who claim to be the owners and unfortunately using the taxpayers. And then we have now the taxpayers in their own space waiting for an election year to vent or even just express themselves in anger. And that is why it's very easy to trigger people to engage in violence, to engage in disinformation, to engage in hooliganism, to engage in all sorts of manner, because these people who have accumulated wealth through being put in positions know the weaknesses of the people at the time of an election. And I think lastly, as I put it, that IEBC should have sought extended partnership in this campaign. Constitutionally, they are mandated to do that work, but there are many players out there who can complement their efforts, including civil society, the religious groups, the media is very key here, because we never saw those campaigns coming out the way we've seen in other elections in this country. So if they become the isolated entity that does this work, you don't expect much results. And that, for me, it is a very regretful observation that we make in our country, especially having deployed resources, and for that matter, public resources. Okay,
different angles coming up here tonight here on the show. I want us to take a quick break, but remember, we're asking you whether the Kenyan electorate is motivated enough to register and elect its leadership, basically participate in electoral processes in this country. At Akisa Wandera at KTN News KE, the hashtag is Frontrow. We're getting back with the show shortly. Stay with us.